Unit 2, Lesson 1, The Search for More Math. Nope, it's actually ratios and ratio language. So we're going to be looking at what ratios are. We're going to use this to kind of, beginning part here, describe two quantities at the same time. It's kind of related to all the stuff you've ever talked about with fractions before as well. So our ICANs, I know. Before you even get those down, make sure you flip back into the beginning of your notebook and put in your table of contents that we are in ratios and whatever page number we're starting on. And then flip back to the page where you're taking your notes today, today's date, page number, and write I can write or say a sentence that describes a ratio. I know how to say words and numbers in the correct order to accurately describe a ratio. So once you've got all that, you're ready to move on. So we're going to look here in just a second. We're going to talk about just some things with kind of an identifying and kind of build up to knowing what a ratio is, okay? So if I take a look at all of these and sorted them, what's one way that you could possibly sort these? Well, lots of things I'm sure you said there, but one of the first things is by color. And how many groups could I make? I could probably make, let's see, I'd make a yellow group, a green group, red, blue. So that gives us what, 4 different groups that we could have. We could also do by area. Lots of different things that we could do to go through and sort out in different ways. So part of the reason why we're talking about this is we're looking at how things compare. And ratios are kind of that piece of math where you're talking about how things compare, but also how they compare in numbers, in rates that you can use consistently across things to make the same comparisons or to make the same amounts to work the same way. Especially things like when you're talking about, for example, making a recipe. If you're making it for 4 people, a recipe is going to go a certain way. If you're going to make it for 40 people, you're certainly not going to make it the exact same way that you make it for 4 people. There's certainly going to be some changes. So let's talk about these for just a little bit here. So I'm going to go over here on a collection that I've got here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at some of the things that we've got here and line them up in our spaces here on these categories. Okay, so let's see. If I look back here on color wise, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue. Okay, so now that we're back in here, I had 6 of the red. Let's fix that 6. That looks not great. Okay, and I had 5 of the green. And 5 of the blue. Let's fix this 6 here. Okay, so when we're talking about what a ratio is, it's just looking at how numbers relate. Oops. It's just how those numbers relate, okay? So one of the ratios I could talk about with one of these categories to another, if I talk about my reds to my green, that ratio is a 6 red to 5 green. I could also talk about how there are 5 green to 5 blue. And on this one, it really doesn't make too much difference about which one you would say first, right? Because they'd be the same, but it could be important. Whatever one that you list first is the one that you're going to say first. Whichever one that you list second is always going to be the one that you say second on it. Okay. We could look at this also another way. Let's look at this last one here. So I had 5 green for 5 blue. Well, how many green are there for each that are in the blue? Actually, isn't it for every 1 green? Isn't there another blue? Yeah, because one green for 1 blue, isn't that the same as 5 green for 5 blue? Isn't that an exact same number? Because these numbers are both the same. Would this look the same if I use this other ratio here? No, I'd have to do 6 to 5 because those wouldn't be ones that we can move like that. Okay. All right, let's get a quick definition down here. So a ratio is the association between 2 or more quantities. So you need to get at least that down. So some examples here, we've got a 3 to 2 ratio. So you could say that in like there for every 3 cups of flour in a recipe, you need 2 eggs. Or a boat that moves 3 meters in 2 seconds. It's a fast moving boat. Actually, 3 meters? That's not that far. Anyway, these are 3 to 2 ratios. Another way you could say it is that it's 3 blue to 2 green, but it's still, all of these still have the same ratio of 3 to 2. And when we see a number like this with that colon in there, that means that we're supposed to say it as 2. So, as in TO, not the number 2. So this is giving us an example of 3 to 2. All right, what about this shape here? What if I did, this said that I was supposed to do 2 units of one color to 1 of another color. All right, so let me put in, there's 1, here's 2 of one color, and then 1 of one more, okay? And I could keep going over and over, right? In fact, I think I will. All right, so I got all of these on here. Made 24 to cover that area. Was I able to cover the whole area equally? Yeah, actually I was. I repeated this ratio, 8 times, right? Because I have 2 purple for every yellow. So this would look as though this would be, in this situation, a 2 to 1 ratio. Are there other ways that you could do this and still use a 2 to 1 ratio? Yeah. Actually, what I'd like for you to do is in your notebook, draw something that you can use a 2 to 1 ratio. So 2 of one color, 2 of another. And at least repeat the pattern. You don't have to repeat it 8 times, but something more than 1 time and something less than 8 times. So somewhere between 2 and 7. And I'd love to see a picture of it. So if you can email that to me, that would be great. So you can pause to work on that. And so you could still use that same ratio. And whatever you did for yours, whether you colored it or you just shaded it as it says there, shaded it 2 different ways, you're going to see that you could still have a 2 to 1 ratio, but it could look different than this because of how, based on what you did to figure that pattern out. But we still used, in both situations, we used a 2 of one color or one shading to a 1 of another. All right, so let's do a little bit of wrap up here. So here we have a 6 to 3 ratio, right? We have 6 green boxes to 3 white circles. What's some other ways that we could say this? Yeah, you could say that it's 6 green to 2 or to 3 white. You could also think of this as maybe for every 2 green, you get 1 white circle. You could also think of this as saying that it's 3 white circles to 6 green squares. But you have to make sure that what you say matches up what's going on here. And since we typically read from left to right and from top to bottom, we would say this is as a 6 to 3 ratio, or we could also think of it as a 2 to 1 ratio. Both would be acceptable ways to say this one. All right. So our goals for today was that we could write and talk about ratios, and that we were able to correctly and accurately explain those ratios. All right, make sure you're all set and ready for your practice.